Welcome back to my series looking back at the 1900s. And in this fifth episode, I am going to be taking a deep dive into the old social convention of dating. Back in the ancient times of the 1900s, because we had real-world social lives and friendships, as I spoke about in the last episode, so make sure you've heard it, that meant that when it came to the opposite sex, real romance was forged this way. And people would actually get into these old things called coupleships. That was before hookup culture, when such a thing was even possible. Back in those days, there was no chance of you going out on a date with someone and having them pay more attention to their cell phones than you, being busy surveying their other sexual options who were your competition, while they were supposed to be focused on getting to know you. Why? Because this technology didn't even exist yet. So when you went on a date with someone, the only thing to do was spend time with them and getting to know them. And how did we do this? By asking each other open-ended questions and then delving deeply into certain topics that interested us, or telling each other stories from one another's lives, and actually actively listening to one another. So you would only really go on a date with someone who you planned on spending hours getting to know for the purpose of forming a relationship. That's what a date was. So that's what happened on them. To accept a date with someone and do otherwise was terribly rude. But when we did this, we would literally expect to spend the entire night getting to know someone very well in a very deep and intimate way, unlike today when they won't have much to say about themselves because there isn't much to them to get to know, and they'll be constantly paying attention to other people in their phone, which is why relationships are no longer developing. But back in those good old days, a date actually was a meaningful occasion, and a fun one too. To ask someone out or get asked out on a date meant something. Actually, when you quote-unquote asked someone out, this could actually mean one of a few things. It could mean, do you want to go out on a single date with me? Or it could mean, do you want to start dating and then continue to do so steadily? Or in other words, do what was called go steady. Or it could mean, do you want to be my girlfriend or boyfriend and be in a coupleship? So the term ask out was a bit of a conceptual phrase. It was literally that significant. Kind of like how dating could mean that you are just getting to know someone, or you are having sex with them, or you are in a relationship with them. So when you told your friend you asked someone out, they would have to clarify. So what, is she your girlfriend now, or what do you mean? Whereas now you don't have to clarify because no one is having relationships anymore. They're only hooking up, and people don't even ask each other out anymore. So that sort of thing wouldn't really even be said today. But back then, relationships were actually very common because they are only a natural consequence of involving someone in your social life who you are attracted to and spending a lot of time talking to them, getting to know them, having deep, intimate conversations, and thus building an emotional bond. And so oftentimes very serious relationships would form this way without anyone even asking the other out at all. They would just simply form naturally over time through this process of socializing because of the fact that there were no cell phone screens separating people, which is the main reason why this process does not still happen today. You see, the connective power of a deep conversation is very great. It really brings two people together closely and causes a profound sense of intimacy between them. This is why couples would begin thinking of themselves as a unit and would start doing everything together and would sort of have a psychic bond where they could actually speak for each other if the other person was not in the room. The partner could tell their friends exactly what their lover would have said to that. Why? Because they have that deep of an understanding of how they think. This, however, wouldn't be news to most of the other friends, who would simply laugh and agree because they, as friends, would know them that well also. These are the kinds of bonds that used to be so common. Some people who were in love would have such a psychic bond that they would feel as though they had a spiritual connection and could finish each other's sentences or know what they were thinking without the other person saying anything, as if they could read each other's minds just through eye contact. This is simply not possible today because people aren't making eye contact anymore since they are too busy looking at their phones. So such romance and spiritual connection is no longer possible, since courtship has been replaced by the empty, transactional sexual encounters of hookup culture, which leaves people feeling empty and unfulfilled because it is all so superficial and meaningless, unlike the way relationships used to be. Back in the 1900s, when we actually went on real dates, if a man and woman wanted to make things official, they would enter what we called a courtship phase, where we would start being more formal about it and involving certain courtship rituals, wherein they would start dressing more nicely in attempt to be more traditionally attractive to one another and going out on dates with a more formal romantic ambiance. And they would practice certain etiquette. The man would behave as more of a gentleman and do such things as opening doors for the woman. The woman would act more ladylike and do things to entice and invite advances from the man. And on these formal dates, they would become more romantic and affectionate towards each other. And then after a number of formal dates of this romantic nature, if things were going well and it felt right, they would discuss making the relationship official, after which they would have sex, which would be called lovemaking back then because of the fact that it would be a very sweet, romantic, and loving act, unlike the empty, animalistic fucking of today. But you see, romance is absent from our current social culture, which isn't even so much a dating culture as just a hookup culture, because romance is the combination of sexuality, emotional intimacy, and courtship rituals. And so when you remove the courtship rituals from dating and make the dates less official, and it is no longer technically dating at all and doesn't involve those same sweet little social niceties that it used to, and you also remove the in-depth conversations that establish an emotional connection and sense of psychological intimacy with someone, then there is obviously going to be no romance that can possibly develop. Then the only thing you have left is physical contact. But without these other two, any sexual interaction is going to be shallow and feel empty, meaningless, and unfulfilling, which will leave one feeling unsatisfied and wanting to try to seek out another partner elsewhere, which is why everyone in hookup culture has become sex addicts, endlessly chasing the superficial stimulation from casual encounters with as many random people as possible. But no matter how many people you hook up with from dating apps, it'll never be as satisfying as making love with a long-term sexual partner like we used to, where you take the time to get to know each other both psychologically and physically, and how to best share pleasure together and become more and more skilled at doing so over a long period of time and much exploration and experimentation over it. Even people who think they want a relationship these days never get very far down that road because of the fact that cell phones are the medium of communication between them and their partners or potential partners, which, as I said in the last video, only causes miscommunication and will mean the relationship ends before it even really begins. And how does it end exactly? In what is called a ghosting, of course. The two people simply stop talking to each other without saying anything about it. Just, because one person decided they don't want to see the other and they haven't been dating for that long or technically, officially dating at all. So they figure that it is entirely appropriate to not actually break up with them, but to instead just stop responding or even block them, leaving the other person to eventually realize that they are not responding and wonder why, and then after some more time realize it must be intentional and again wonder why and what exactly happened to cause the ghosting. This is an extremely sociopathic and antisocial, and when I say antisocial, I mean that in the clinical psychological sense, meaning psychopathic way to break up with someone, especially given that people don't just do this with someone they've only just met and maybe been on a single date with, if that. But plenty of people do this with those they've been dating for weeks or even months. Such rude and inhumane behavior was considered insanely inappropriate for a breakup in the polite society of the 1900s, when breakups and the dissolution of a relationship needed to be as formal as the asking out and forming of it was. It was like launching a nuclear weapon. Both parties had to turn their keys and then say goodbye and give each other closure. I recall as late as the year 2000 when I was in high school and was at the very immature age of just 16 years old, and a hot girl that I had dated for just 3 weeks turned out to be a really annoying ditz, got upset with me for breaking up with her verbally over the phone, saying to me, "You don't date someone for 3 whole weeks and break up with them over the phone." When even I thought it was appropriate enough and was doing it rather than waiting for us to hit the 1 month mark when I knew for sure I'd have to do it in person. But by her old-fashioned socialite standards, even at our immature age, I was being socially inappropriate and unacceptable. And honestly, she was right, for I was being avoidant of a certain social obligation that I had to her back then. But she must have been the last hot young girl to think this way, because since then, I've been ghosted by literally hundreds of girls, some of whom had claimed to have feelings for me, or even want a serious relationship with me, even having said they love me in some instances, such as one girl who had had a crush on me and claimed to want to be with me long term, and whom I eventually established a formal and official relationship with after over 2 months of monogamous dating and getting to know each other very deeply and building intimacy, only to be bewildered as I found myself blocked by her out of the blue 2 days later, without a single word of indication as to why. It was very perplexing and heartbreaking as well, and felt so cold and sociopathic because it was. But Imagine saying to someone now that they can't break up with you over the phone after 3 weeks, or better yet, even a month or two. You'd sound clingy and crazy, and they'd get defensive. They'd probably say something like, I don't owe you anything. We aren't even a couple, and think to themselves, how dare this person tell me that I don't have the right to break up with them any way I want to. I could very well do so by posting about it on social media and doxing them for the reasons why. Which is also a new common breakup method that would have been considered extreme and insane back then. These breakup methods just go to show how pathologically psychopathic our methods of relating sexually and emotionally have become, replacing romance with sociopathy and courtship with cruelty. No wonder no one is getting married anymore. Love is a thing of the past, and instead of treating those we date with empathy, people instead treat each other narcissistically, like objects to be used, abused, and discarded without a single care. Dating, like everything else that takes place online, has been inshittified. Ironically, many people are now making cell phone videos complaining about not being able to find love and having bad experiences in dating, and yet they fail to see the irony that the very medium they are using to record those messages and have this antisocial social life is the very cause of their dilemma. However, these problems with lack of intimacy aren't just confined to the realms of friendship and dating/sexual relations, but are a symptom of a much larger social and cultural set of issues, such as the loss of community and social trust, which is what I'm going to be getting into in the next episode, where I'll be taking a deep dive into those topics of community and social trust. So make sure you are subscribed and that your subscription is set to all so that you will see when that comes out. Or you can check the description below to see if I have posted it. And also, be sure to check out all of my other videos in the videos section. And otherwise, I will talk to you guys then.